Okay, good morning, BMH. So today I will talk about stem cell transplantation. So before going into the topic per se, I'll briefly touch upon a history. So early 19th centuries, several physicians, one of them being Charles Edward, so they tried giving calves bone marrow to women who have chlorosis, green sickness, or which is otherwise it is basically hyperchromic anemia. So what they believed was the marrow contained some elements which can help in production of the blood cells, which can correct anemia. So he dissolved bone marrow in glycerol, and these are all experimental therapies which were given in the old centuries, and some women had some recovery. So this could be the first evidence that marrow has got some cells which can help in the recovery of anemia. So terminology. Initially, I thought I will keep my presentation name as bone marrow transplantation, which is a previously the stem cell transplantation, which is initially termed as bone marrow transplantation. So we all know what is a bone marrow. So it is the soft tissue that fills the cols of all large bones, which is primarily involved in the production of all the major three cell lineages, as well as other cells which helps in our immune constitution. Okay. So this is the procedure of the bone marrow study, which we do, which we aspirate the marrow and also do a biopsy. And this is what is happening inside. So there are different terminologies, as I said. So BMT or bone marrow transplantation, because initially the initial stem cells were taken from the bone marrow. So hence the name bone marrow transplantation. So later the terminology is slightly changed. It is stem cell transplantation, which is specifically the hematopoietic stem cells. So other peripheral blood SCT, this is mainly from the transplant world. This UCT invariably stands for the umbilical cord blood transplantation. So what exactly is stem cell transplantation? It is basically a procedure. What do you achieve from a stem cell transplant? It is for treating life-threatening blood immune or genetic disorders. The indication for transplant, be it autologous or allogeneic transplant, is increasing day by day. Many of them were experimental before, now it is done routinely. So the basic purpose is to eradicate a diseased marrow or an immune system which is causing trouble. So the damage causing cells are removed. At the same time, it is replaced by normal healthy ones, be it from a donor or even the patient own good stem cells. So what are stem cells? Stem cells, I'll be talking about the hematopoietic stem cell, me being a hemato-oncologist. So stem cells are all immature cells that can give rise to all the cells, totipotent, pluripotent, you call it. Okay, this is an electron microscopic picture of a dividing stem cell. So my prime focus would be here, the blood forming cells or the hematopoietic stem cells. As I said, BMT, now it is called HSCT, it is hematopoietic stem cell transplant. So what about the initial, how they landed up with this idea that you can replace the marrow to cure or even treat a disease? So it was in France, Georges Mathé, 1958. He tried transplanting bone marrow. A few patients whose marrow was damaged, who developed pancytopenia following a radiation accident. So all of these transplants rejected because the HLA biology all were not that clear and not studies came afterwards. So fortunately, the 5 treated were able to recover, probably partially due to the transplants. And the major work, initial stuff was done by this man, Donald Thomas, and this along with Murray, they got the Nobel Prize in 1990 because the Nobel Prize this year was announced 2 days back only. So this is 1990. So what they did in University of Washington, they did the first bone marrow transplant for a leukemia patient from a matched donor. So these are the preliminary ages of HLA matching and all. So they did the whole body irradiation to kill the cancer cell. At the same time, immunosuppress so that he would accept the graft. So a marrow was a compatible donor with drug therapy, and the drugs were used to prevent a rejection. So these are the timelines: 1958 first transplant, and later on several drugs and new things started on adding up. And today the field is entirely different. Okay. So India's first. So India TMH did in 1983, a 9-year-old girl with AML. And Vellore, who was the pioneer under the aegis of Dr. Maman Chandi. They were the first to do a marrow in a thalassemia in 1986. So first well-established transplant program was established under Dr. Maman Chandi, who can be aptly called as the father of hematology in India. So current status, this is a CIBMTR is an international registry which keeps track of all the data of transplant happening all over the places, all over the world, and especially in the US. So there are more than 5.4 lakh patients per year, more than 35 countries, more than 380 centers, and various publications out of numerous researches going on in the field of transplant. So where does this SCT, I'd be further on mentioning SCT, fit in the treatment of blood disorders? So it is almost never done as first step. Exceptions are there because in case of, say, if it is a thalassemia, so it is a curative of our thalassemia. It's a benign hematological condition. So, but in malignant, it is never done as a first step. So it is not offered as it's not a replacement for a chemotherapy also. This transplant is possible only in a situation where you have controlled the disease to an extent that further consolidation is done by the transplant. Okay. So this cartoon with depicting the deceased patient, chemotherapy, disease in control, reasonable control, transplant, then you get the cure. So how is it different from the other transplant? Solid organ transplant is entirely a different one when compared to stem cell. So basically we need an organ, be it a liver, lung, or heart, or a kidney. The basic biology is that graft, usually the host conditions are against usually that. So rejection is the axis which is predominating. Because this transplanted cell, the organ have a few number of these alloreactive cells. There are cases of GVHD because we need to give immunosuppression more for preventing rejection. But as well as stem cell transplant, the axis is in the GVHD more than GVS. There could be rejection as well, but because this hematopoietic stem cell disperse all throughout your body to the blood. So it is the fundamental difference between these two. So indications, whom all do you transplant? So this is from the American Society, ASBMT. Now it is renamed as TCT, Transplantation and Cellular Therapies. So they have a long list of, this is in pediatric population, this is in adult population. So you can see various number. This N stands for not recommended. I don't know, it's a long list. Sorry for the slides are crowded. There are several indications, including multiple sclerosis, systemic sclerosis. So there are several autoimmune. I mean to say, other than hematological diseases, the autoimmune and HLH syndromes, where this you can see the autologous. This D stands for developmental. There are centers doing transplants specifically for these diseases. So types of transplant, basically, these are divided into two: autologous and allogenous. So autologous, auto means own, patient's own cells. Allogenous means you all know the cells from another person. Syngenic means it's an identical twin. So this allogenic could be a fully matched sibling, fully matched unrelated donor. It's a full match. Matching, I will be coming into detail. Match cord blood cell or half match, which is otherwise called a haploidentical. So basic steps, I will walk you through the basic steps. This is right towards, I will, first would be a mobilization. You have to mobilize the stem cell, be it from a patient in autologous or from a healthy donor in allogenous. Then you collect the stem cells. You condition the patient to damage the marrow for a diseased marrow, also to suppress the immunity. Then these collected stem cells are infused, stem cell infusion, and then you wait for the hematopoietic recovery. So mobilization, there are drugs which help in mobilization. It's either GCSF, growth factors, or plerixafor, which is CXCR4 inhibitor, or even there are chemo plus growth factors based mobilization. Stem cell collection, I will come into details. There are different sources. Initially, it was the bone marrow. Directly, you take the sample from the marrow. That's why the term BMT. But now, majority is taken from peripheral blood, or there is a small fraction doing umbilical cord transplant. Conditioning, you ablate the marrow or not. There are non-ablative milder ablative regimens. And stem cell infusion, this is basically the CD34, which is the marker of hematopoietic stem cells. There is a dosage. There should be an adequate dosage. Ideally, it should be more than 3. Ideally, it should be 5 into 10 to the power 6 cells per kg. And hematopoietic recovery, you go through various complications, expected as well as unanticipated. So indications. So I said broadly we divide into autologous as well as allo. So majority malignancies like myeloma, lymphoma, and solid tumors, you do autologous transplant. Especially in lymphoma, you do in relapse after giving salvage chemo. Myeloma, the indication standard recommendation is in first CR. Solid tumors also. Allogenic, we do in leukemia, where the stem cell or itself is defective. Okay, here the stem cells are not defective. The further differentiate downstream, the lymphocytes are different. The lymphocytes or plasma cells are deficient. So here the stem cell itself is different. So no point in treating with chemo and giving back the same stem cells. So autologous won't work. So that's why there are exceptions, APML and all, there is option of a autologous transplant, but generally, broadly, for a general crowd, this is the concept. So leukemia, myelodysplastic, myeloproliferative, CMML, and certain lymphomas, follicular, CLL, mantle, or these benign conditions like thalassemia, aplastic anemia, immunodeficiency. Because thalassemia, what is the defect? This is a genetic defect in the stem cells, because the blood forming cells that there is a translocate beta to lysine, this beta chain defect. So we have to switch to a normal marrow, then only we can hope for cure. So the basic concept of allogenic stem cell transplant is to change or reboot the stem cells. So this is some statistics. Always the majority of the transplant happening is autologous transplant. Okay, so this is a graph for the allogenic transplant. This is a US data from CABMTR. And coming to the indications, you can see this green one is the autologous. So myeloma majority is the autologous transplant. There are indications for allogenic transplant in myeloma, especially post relapse post autologous transplant. And this lymphomas also you can see majority is the autologous transplant, and also there is allogenic, especially in follicular, CLL and all. We can go for allogenic, RIC-allo, or even a post autologous relapse, you can go for an allogenic transplant. Here we see the leukemias, all are allo, nobody does an auto. And this is Hodgkin lymphoma. Other cancers could be solid malignancies where you do autologous transplant, other various indications where you do allogenic transplants. Okay, so as I said, these are the main difference between autologous and allo transplant in regards to the procedure. So first is stem cell mobilization. Auto means the same patient is treated initially with chemo, disease in remission, or even at least a very good partial remission. Myeloma, at least we hope for a VGPR. Then mobilizing with the GCSF or plerixafor, plus or minus plerixafor. Then stem cells are collected. How you collect stem cells? This is basically peripheral blood collection I have shown. This is simple procedure because when compared to the other solid organ transplants, you need an organ. There is no surgery involved in this stem cell collection. It is just the patient is. It's like how you donate like platelets. It's an apheresis machine. You have to be cannulated, and you have to sit there for like 2-3 hours, depending on how many cycles, how many collections we take. And the collection, it's collected in a bag. Okay, so further on, this collected stem cells may be processed. If the stem cells are more than adequate, the rest of it can be cryopreserved for a future use, and you give condition. This will be kept because in myeloma we collect the stem cell, keep it. We can keep it at for at least 48 hours or 48 degrees, and you reinfuse after giving a strong conditioning. Which in myeloma usually we give melphalan high dose, or in lymphoma there are intense myeloablative beam therapies which ablates the diseased marrow. Okay, afterwards these stem cells are reinfused. which is thawed, which is if it is a cryopreserved one, you can thaw it and give, or fresh you can infuse after 48 hours. Okay, so major job in the disease control is done by this conditioning treatment. Why do you give stem cells? Because otherwise this is so intense that the hematopoietic recovery is slow. So to fasten the recovery, you add stem cells. So major work is done by this chemo, and you rescue. So it is basically high dose therapy with stem cell rescue, which is named as autologous transplant. But when you come to allogenic transplant, so collection is from the donor, healthy donor, who is an HLA match. I said there are various type of donors. So whoever you seem fit to be a donor, collect from, you give the GCSF to the donor, 5 days, and then collect. Marrow, there is no need of GCSF, we directly aspirate from the marrow. Usually nowadays you do take from the peripheral blood, and it is processed. Some patients might have to be RBC depleted. Then you give conditioning to the patient. So here the purpose of conditioning is two. One is to kill the diseased marrow. Second, to immunosuppress so that you won't reject the infused stem cell, which is a allogen, which is from a different donor, which is deemed foreign by the body. So this is what I said. Autologous, basically the chemo-responsive tumor may relapse ultimately. So you consolidate with the high dose therapy. So autologous usually always the regimen is always myeloablative, melphalan in myeloma, beam therapy in lymphoma. Usually BCN is carmazine, etoposide. This is given over, this beam therapy is over 6 days. So you need to freeze the cells. You collect the cells because you can't keep it for more than 48 hours as in myeloma. So you have to cryo freeze the cells and give it back after thawing on the day of transplant, which is day 0. Okay, so few more data. Why do you do autologous transplant in Hodgkin lymphoma? So Hodgkin lymphoma, first CR1, nobody usually does transplant autologous. Usually it is in the relapsed scenario. You give a salvage chemo followed by a autologous transplant. There is definitely a survival advantage. There's a DLBCL also. You can see the similar kind of graph. And in myeloma, as years progress, this is in 2001 to 4, 5 to 8 to 12. So the survival, this is still 2016. It's pretty old data. So the survival curves are on the favorable towards the it's rising post autologous, probably due to better supportive care, better centers, better techniques. Okay. So causes of death. Autologous transplant, majority of the death after autologous transplant due to the relapse of the primary disease. Okay, then next comes the infection. Then later the minor hemorrhage, secondary malignancies, organ failures, etc. 3-year mortality rates. Okay, so now coming to the allogenic transplant. So we know the principle. Why do you do an allogenic transplant? So the genetic match is the key in allogenic transplant. So allogenic transplant trends. So as year progresses, 2017, the major disease for which the transplant allo is done is AML, acute myeloid leukemia. So followed by ALL, MDS, NHL later on. Okay, CML, initially it was a deadly disease, but after the invent of TKIs, which is imatinib and further second, third generation TKIs, the indication for transplant in CML have drastically come down. So CP, we don't ever transplant, and the indication for CML are restricted to a blast crisis, CML going for a blast crisis or certain mutations which confers resistance to the TKIs like T315I and all. Okay. So what is a match? This concept you have to be very clear, because this concept is that there is something called the HLA match. It is not the blood group match. So common people won't know the matching sibling matching. What is a match? It's not the blood group match. It's an HLA match. What is HLA? So this is the chromosome 6. It's a 6p, short petite arm of the chromosome. This area codes for the MHC proteins. That's HLA locking. So there are 3 classes. Class 1 and 2 are the important, most important. Where you call it like A, B, C, D, Q, D, P, D, R, and all. Each one set in each side. So there are 12. Okay. So this has to be matched. The transplant, the important is mainly this A, B, C, D, Q, D, R. Nowadays, BP also coming to the picture. So this 10 by 10, if you this 10 by 10 is like A, B, C, D, Q, D, R. If you call 12, now if it's 12 by 12, it is DP also is included. Okay, 8, 9 is a 1 or 2 antigen mismatch. 5 by 10 or 1/2 is match is called a haplo match, half match. Okay, so nowadays the HLA match is done to the allele level. Okay, previously antigen level, then allele level, now even downwards. Okay, so donor options, HLA match sibling is the real brothers and sisters. Okay, then you come an unrelated out of the family, but it's an unrelated donor, volunteer, or it's a matched unrelated, commonly called as mud donor. Okay, and umbilical cord donor, because umbilical cord also has stem cells. Because many people ask me, like when the baby is about to be born, so various people approach like you have to harvest and keep the umbilical cord stem cells. So they have stem cells and they bank it for any possible future use. Haploidentical is a half matched. So either you can take marrow from the stem cell from the marrow or peripheral blood. Majority now do it from the peripheral blood. Matching, you see the matching and then you collect. So that's the way. And related, unrelated, as depending on the who you take from. So here is a common, this is a concept. Basically, the mother and father, this there is what is the percentage of a sibling to have an exact match with a different sibling? So it's a 25% match. So this both alleles are the same, these are the same. So this is a full match with the this sibling. So if this is the deceased guy, you can take this can be considered as a fully matched, and you further type and evaluate. Okay, so 25% chance for 10 by 10. So the problem is that this 25% chance, when say now that a nuclear family is one kid, single kid, and also the probability of a matched sibling is less, say 30%. In us, probably around 10-20%. So that's the place where you look for a unrelated donor from any registries. Okay, so likelihood is highest in his own race. Okay, but the mud will need time. It is like, imagine a Google for a HLA match. So you put in your HLA and search for a matched HLA elsewhere. It could be from US, it could be from Germany. There are several registries. Okay, so search might take time, and you have to identify a donor, and then you have to find and screen and counsel them for a donation, and you have to collect and transport the stem cell to the transplant center where the patient is. Okay, so strategies to overcome this donor issue is the unrelated stem cell donor registries. There are several registries. NMDP, DKMS is the German registry. UK, there is Anthony Nolan registry. These are all big registries. Okay, this Indian registries, this Datri is the main registry. This Marrow Donor registry is based in Mumbai. SCRS Stem Cell Registry, this is basically initiated from the Bangalore. There are small registries when compared to the international registries. So up to 60% can get a match. Partially, then comes the partially matched haploidentical. So imagine, so this is the Datri portal where you can all be a part of as a voluntary stem cell donor. Okay. So next coming to haploidentical. So half match. So this is red, this is green. So this guy, this and this is a kind of a half match. You have to look for the other alleles also, because one half anyway you will get from either of these parents. Okay. So the possibility of a haplo match is more when compared to a full match. Okay, so anything above 50 or above, and one half of the alleles, one half allele should be matched. That's a haplo donor. Okay, so this will increase the donor pool, especially in India, where cost is an issue, donor availability an issue. So especially in India, more and more haplo transplants are happening only for this particular reason. Okay, because the donor is available in the family itself, faster collection of stem cells, and he remains available further on, because further on there is a possibility of other cellular therapies like donor lymphocyte infusion, where you infuse the lymphocytes post transplant. If there is say any graft failure, you infuse the donor lymphocyte, infuse a small amount of GVHT for a GVL effect and all. So in that scenario, if you use a mud, you have to trace the mud donor again for further silver therapy. So haplo-wise, it's easier. But haplo is a tough transplant because it has the protocols are different. There are complications. There is a different set of complications, infection pattern specific to haplo. Okay. So the choice, obviously, the priority always will be a matched sibling donor. The next alternate, first alternative would be a matched unrelated, followed by a haplo. Okay? But more and more haplos are coming up these days, especially with the newer protocol, post-transplant cyclophosphamide and all. Okay. These are all things I already said. The procurement time is highest for the mud because it includes the search and all. And DLA graft boosts the further availability of donor. If a match sibling is always available, haplo is available, but not rare once it can. But mud, there are difficulties. Okay. So I will go with our case. Presently, she is admitted with us in BMH. She is evaluated for pancytopenia elsewhere and did a marrow also. It was inconclusive. So we did evaluate here, but in the first smear itself, we got some blasts. So marrow, we did the marrow 28% blast, cytogenetics being 43XX is the normal, and molecular panel showed a mutation, FLT3 TKD. Other rest mutations, ITD and all are negative. So it's an AML intermediate risk. So intermediate risk, the usual recommendations are you do give an induction. You can, if being a young patient, if you have a sibling match, then you can either transplant or not. You can even put her a three more consolidation chemotherapy and observe. Okay, so we did give a 7+3 induction, 7 days of cytosar and 3 days of dono. Day 14 marrow was satisfactory because less than 5% blast with the hypocellular. So that's good. But 28 days, she had persistent pancytopenia. So we did one more week. We waited for a few more days and did a marrow. It was showing blast, 18% blast. Minimal residual disease was 0.48. So more than 0.1 is deemed positive. And we also did an next-gen sequencing, which is a molecular panel for extensive AML mutations and including P53. This was done because she had a strong family history. Because father died of colon cancer, mother died of some rectal cancer, mother's brother had some blood malignancy, no records available. Paternal grandmother died of some acute leukemia. So there is something going on in the genetic background. So we did a NGS as well. The report would be available in a few days' time. So meanwhile, so this is a primary induction failure, 18% plus. So we have to further give a salvage. So plan was to give two sisters. She had two sisters. The HLA was sent. So this is the HLA report. Okay. So you can see that this is a 10 by 10 and 10, this 5 A, B, C, A, DR, B1, DQ, B1. So this is a sibling 2. Okay. So this one half is match, here one half is match, here one half is match, one half. Don't look at this. This is like either of this. One half should be match. This is match, and this 4 are match. So one, you can see one haplo match is there with this sister. But sibling 1 no match. You can see these two no match. Okay, absolutely different. Here also B also mismatch. So anyway, this is out. So this is at least a prospect there. That is, it's a, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So out of 10, there's 7 match. Okay, this is not match, this is not match. So this is a 7 by 10 match. So at least 50%, one half is there. So it's a haplo match. Okay, she could be a prospective donor. So the plan would be a salvage second induction, which she would be starting in a few days. She would be FLAG-IDA, which is one of the most intensive chemos, followed by an allogenic stem cell transplantation. So should I stop with the haplodonor? No. So I would initiate a mud search. If not, if no donor available, then I would proceed because time matters. Because I can do flag and then sit on flag, wait for the donor and all. So I have to proceed with the immediately available donor. Also, I'm planning to send HLA of both daughters because haplodonors, we have to look for the donor-specific antigens because donor-specific, no, sorry, this is not antigen, sorry, antibody. So what is donor-specific antibody? Because in case of an HLA mismatch, so there would be anti-HLA antibodies in recipient serum. So if it is the very high titer antibodies, then that can cause rejection because if there is a very high titer antibody, already is a 50 match, half mismatch. What will happen is the immediate rejection. So there is something called an MFI value, median fluorescent index. So according to that, beyond a particular, you can't take that. Either you have to desensitize them to reduce there are protocols for that, but usually you choose a different donor who have a low MFI, negative DSA. Okay, so this allogenic recipient types, you can see this unrelated donor. This includes the haplo donors also. So after 2004-8, because there is post-transplant cyclophosphamide, this is a new concept in haplo. So more and more people are doing unrelated transplant these days. So from the United States, this is actually a matched donor. This is still going strong, but these unrelated donors are going. This cord blood usually done United States, they do much, but not much in India. Okay, because we don't have a state-sponsored cord blood registries and all, so very less. And that's a complicated transplants also. So then rise in haplotransplant, this is data from Europe. And how do you overcome the HLA barriers? There are other methods also to diminish the HLA barriers in mismatch scale. What is causing this problem, rejection, GVHD and all? So basically T cells. T cells, you deplete the T cells either ex vivo or in vivo. Okay, ex vivo, you negative selection of T cells, you have to manipulate the graft. Okay, in vivo, this is post-transplant cyclophosphamide. This has entirely changed the prospect of haplotransplant because you do give post-transplant, day 3 and 4, you give high-dose cyclophosphamide. This will kill the alloreactive T cells. Okay, so that is a new concept, and post-BTCI revolutionized the haplotransplant, I would say. And ATG pre-transplant condition, you do ATG, and it's also deplete the T cells. So this is CD34 selected peripheral blood. So once you deplete the T cells, this is 34 means the marker of stem cells. Okay, so there is a concept because the T cells are causing trouble, so they cause less GVHD and chronic GVHD. Data shows that, but many suspected that if you take out the T cells are to a limit, they can cause this also what you call it a graft versus leukemia effect. So you need some amount of GVHD, especially in malignant conditions. Okay, but leukemia relapse not increased by T cell depletion. There is data, and DFS and survival curves are more or less the comparable. Okay, so now coming to the source of stem cells, I said now previously it was from BMT. You aspirate from posterior superior iliac spine. It's a procedure done under GA, but what happens is this bone marrow aspirates have less of T cells when compared to peripheral cells. So the concept that there is less GVHD, acute or chronic. Okay, so and less GVL also. Okay, so in case of benign condition like thalassemia, we prefer to take a marrow sample because they have less of lymphocytes, so less chance of GVHD. Because in thalassemia, why do we need to bother or increase the morbidity with GVHD? Because we don't want the GVL effect because it's not a malignancy. Okay. And coming to peripheral blood, which is mostly done these days, it's from a peripheral vein. You do the collection from using an apheresis machine. You mobilize with GCSF preparation, 5 days of GCSF injection, more GVL, faster engraftment, more GVHD. Okay. Umbilical cord, they have a few cells, including stem cells as well as the T cells are already named. They are not exposed to much of triggers. Okay, antigen-wise and all. So there is no preparation needed, less GVHD, delayed engraftment. So for an adult, a single cord blood is insufficient for providing adequate stem cells. So now they are doing double cord cells because the stem cell has to be adequate. So if someone asks you why do you preserve the stem cells, so for an adult transplant, so and haplotransplant, donor pool is more these days. So whether to preserve umbilical cord would be okay. Okay, so this is the peripheral marrow collection. What you do is you simultaneously aspirate from both sides. You small allocates, 3 ml, 5 ml allocates. You collect up to 15 to 20 ml per kg of the donor. Okay, so this body will usually replenish the marrow that is taken within 4 weeks. This is peripheral blood collection. This is, you can see the donor. You can even be a patient, the myeloma, lymphoma, you get autologous, or it's a donor. This is the spectrum. It's the same machine which we have here in our blood bank. So you give the donor, whoever the donor, be it a patient or a healthy donor, GCSF for 5 days, and 5th day you assess the stem CD34 in the blood. If it is adequate above 20, you collect. Okay. Umbilical cord. blood from umbilical cord is collected. HLA, we can even go with the 6x6 HLA in case of this umbilical cord. Potential advantage: readily available, less GVHD, but disadvantages about potential very lower cell dose, poor viability, longer time to engraftment. So if the longer the time taken for engraftment, more the infections are transplant related morbidity. Okay. Cell source, this green one is a peripheral blood, larger chunk is a peripheral blood, marrow is gradually coming down. Okay, these are few cord blood transplants. So excess cells you collect, or even in a lymphoma, as I said, if you are infusing after a few days, after 6 or 7 days, you have to cryo-freeze the stem cells. What we use is a nutrient and a DMSO. Nutrient could be albumin or cryopoor plasma. And then you freeze in a liquid nitrogen at minus 180 degrees. This can be kept for years. Okay. So this is about the stem cell source. So how do you make space for the stem cells in the marrow? Okay, that's the term what we call as a conditioning chemotherapy. So I said melphalan and beam in autologous. There are several conditioning in allogeneic. So depending upon the intensity of the chemotherapy given, it could be myeloablative, non-myeloablative, reduced intensity. Okay. So the ideal, what would be the ideal? Intensity is more, apply the marrow, and less of toxicity. But you have to balance between this quadrant. Okay, toxicity more, intensity less is the worst. Okay, so say in an elderly male who has an AML, so you can't go full myeloablative. So you have to do a reduced intensity so that the chemo which takes care of the diseased marrow is compromised, but at the same time we hope for the graft will act up and have a GVL effect later on, which will combat the leukemia cells. Okay, so these are various regimen as per increasing intensity and increasing toxicity, busulfan, cyclophosphamide, total body radiation. Okay, so common conditioning regimen, AML being the most commonly subjected for LO. So these are the most common conditioning regimen. This is myeloablative Bucil, Buflu and or TBI. These are the Buflu because doses are different in these two. Okay. So before taking up a patient for a transplant, you have to have a minimal standard organ functions which will dictate the patient outcome in the transplant period. Okay, there are several models. It is HCT, hematopoietic cell transplantation comorbidity index. Various factors is scored so that to dictate how the mortality would be, transplant related mortality or the day 30 or day 100 mortality would be scored as per the CTCI. Though this is added upon by the disease, individual risk into a low, intermediate, high and very high risk. So that this is called DRI, disease risk index. Okay, so higher HSCTCA means the patient has more comorbidities, be it a diabetic, be it a rheumatological problem, be it a cardiac problem. So this is higher non-relapse mortality and lower overall survival. So more than or equal to 3, you can see the NRM, non-relapse mortality above even up to 40%. Okay, and same with the DRA also. Okay, so the model comparing DRA and HSCTCA, which predicts the survival. Okay, so conditioning, this I've already told, two purpose, myeloablation, which is done by these all things, and immunosuppression, prevent the graft rejection, many drugs specifically given for that. Okay, so you collected the marrow, you ablated the marrow, so you come to day 0. Okay, so this is the stem cell product which we collected, peripheral blood stem cell product, which comes in a bag, which is infused. This happens in a half an hour. Okay, the patient happily sits there and gets the stem cell infusion. Okay, so what happens after the stem cell infusion? Okay, conditioning given HSCT, you wait for the engraftment, which usually happens within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Engraftment, what is engraftment? Engraftment means you ablate the marrow, counts drop to 0, platelets and TLC all goes to 0. Then the stem cells will come up and they start dividing and fill up the marrow spaces and produce the blood cells. So that is called engraftment. So successful engraftment is essential for any transplant program. Okay. So later you immunosuppress and later we taper the immunosuppression and then the patient goes into a normal. Okay, this is the ideal scenario. But non-ideal scenario, we are faced with numerous complications. Okay, regimen toxicities. So because all these are toxic drugs, mucositis, vomiting, infections, metabolic complications, okay, cardiovascular bacteria, you name it, you have all of this, okay. Even in a single patient, you can have all this, okay. So broadly, 5 phases of transplant, okay. So phase 1 is high dose myeloablative therapy. Phase 2 is the ensuing marrow failure, okay, ablation. Then comes the early 3 to 4 weeks. There's the engraftment. Once the engraftment comes in, it's called the early recovery. Then early convalescence, okay. Then late convalescence, more than 1 year, okay. So you, as I said, you are faced with the GVHDs, viral infection, bacterial infection, veno-occlusive disease, okay. Is the immune function, because not just the TLC, DLC drop, the immune system, like the CD4, CD8 cells, all drops, and it has to recover. It usually occurs late. Okay. So stages: transplant, conditioning, pancytopenia. There is these timelines where you can get various infections. Okay, gram positive, gram negative, all sorts of infections, acute GVHD. Previously, it was termed acute GVHD usually happens within the first 100 days, chronic GVHD more than 100 days. Okay, immune reconstitution occurs on the same period. And later on, you get the viral infections. Even a CMV can occur in the initial phases also, especially if it is haplo and all. Okay, so broadly, the complications in HCT. Okay, rejection, the donor stem cell never taken, especially I said haplo, if you have a high DSA, immediate rejection is the fate. Okay, various infections, GVHDs, VOD, mucositis, cystitis, and all. Sorry, I said GVHD twice. So early, late, there are different phases. We have different patterns of complications. So how do you manage infection? Because that's the major threat in the initial transplant. You admit the patient post for conditioning. You put the stem cells and wait for count recovery. Main morbidity or even mortality is with the infection. So you keep them in a HEPA filtered room, hand hygiene, isolation of diarrheal illnesses, rapid treatment in institution of antibiotic, antifungal, monitoring for CMV infection. So then comes the GVHD. GVHD means graft versus host disease. Okay. So basically what happens in first phase, you give the condition, you damage all the epithelial cells. So damaged epithelial cells will trigger the antigen presenting cells. So antigen presenting cells, what happens? It presents the antigens into the CD effector cells. What are effector cells? CD4, CD8 cells. So CD8 and CD8 are triggered, and then further on, they downstream they activate several cytokines, and they are recruited into the areas where there is maximum antigen exposure. So which are the areas which have maximum exposure? Could be skin, GI, and liver. Liver because the portal circulation entirely drained into the initially into the liver. So it's the first contact. Same with GI. Many commensals and normal pathogenic, non-pathogenic bacteria are there, and skin extensively exposed to microbes. Okay. Clinically, acute GVHD is mainly target skin, liver, and GI tract. You have a grading system, okay, and staging as well as grading. So this is the immune biology, conditioning, graft source. So ideal way is this way: immune reconstitution, no GVHD, and some amount of graft versus leukemia, which takes care of any residual disease. But you deviate from this alloreactive GVHD or acute or chronic GVHD, and or even the other way, no GVHD, normal immune reconstitution. We have to balance somewhere between this. So this is the ideal which rarely we achieve. Okay, rarely or even we achieve. It's not like we don't achieve. So this is acute GVHD first 100 days, then chronic GVHD. Chronic GVHD is mainly like an autoimmune disease. Okay, these are antibodies which attack skin, eye, mouth, GI, liver. Once the immune reconstitution comes in, you get the chronic GVHD. So this acute GVHD, once you see it, this is like even worse than a burn. The skin will start peeling off, and it's very difficult to watch on the skin. Grade 4 skin GVHD. The GI findings: jaundice, as I said, skin, GI, and liver. Okay, high risk GVHD mortality is very high and low response to steroids. Chronic GVHD, as I said, this affects various organs, and this is basically acute inflammation, tissue injuries triggering fibrosis, and this fibrosis will continue unless you give adequate immunosuppression and all. Okay, so acute GVHD, how do you treat it? Is high dose steroids. There are several agents used for steroid refractory GVHD. Ruxolitinib is a JAK inhibitor, which is one of them. Reached 2 trials, steroid refractory acute GVHD. So chronic GVHD and relapse. So there was a concept that this chronic, when you have a little bit of chronic GVHD, the relapse incidence is less because there is evidence. This is an indirect evidence that some amount of GVL is happening. Okay, this is for ruxolitinib in REACH3 trial. That is for steroid refractory chronic GVHD, which I was also co-investigator because our center was also this phase 3 international trial. Ibrutinib is a new molecule for chronic GVHD. So this is immune recovery of CD4 cells because this occurs late. They also predict the infection of CMV. CMV, I would particularly, it's important in allogenic transplant because it's troublesome. So we used to monitor CMV every 2 weekly in matched sibling or weekly in haplo starting from day 14. Okay, there's a cutoff where it is cutoff which trigger preemptive therapy with the ganciclovir. Okay. So mortality. So HLA identical, this is mortality data 2010-11. So all data, so I would rush through. Causes of death after HLA sibling, 29% is a primary disease coming back, then infections. Okay. So again, unrelated donor, majority 24% is from the infections or from the disease. Okay. So I will take you through a case. I don't know, there's a crowded slide. We have our patient which we had in Delhi. This 20-year-old female initially diagnosed as BCR-ABL positive ALL. Okay. So this was put on initial MCP protocol with TKI, which is dasatinib. She relapsed in CNS in April, that is 3 years later. Okay. And then he was given a salvage and followed by a haplo transplant. The father was the donor, 6/10 match with this conditioning, flu site, TBI, foci, and followed by dasatinib maintenance. She developed a grade 4 GVHD also, gut GVHD. Then she was in remission, but she relapsed in December 2019 with CNS, only CNS, with marrow was in remission. And chimerism was 15%. She was again given a CNS directed salvage and she received a CAR cell therapy from China, okay, in January with these specification. And later he was put on a third generation. Dasatinib was changed to ponatinib, which is a third generation TKI. Now the plans are going on because I have mailed my mentor in MD Anderson regarding any need for a second haplo because we are evaluating her for a remission now. So CSF and marrow. So you can see the course of her disease. She's still alive. She was diagnosed in 14. She went through so many things, and she's still with us. Okay. So chimera, as I spoke about chimerism, the brief mention of chimerism. Chimera is a mix. Okay, this is a Greek mythology term. So why is chimerism important in the transplant? Because chimera means the donor and the recipient. How much percentage is the donor? How much percentage is the recipient? Because post transplant we expect a full chimerism. So how do we check the chimerism? Because we check for the VNTR, which is variable number tandem repeats or short tandem repeats. So one example I can give, this is a recipient. This is the marker specific for recipient. This is the marker specific for the donor. So post-transplant, you look at the specimen. So there is a bit of this recipient like peak here, 8%. Rest is more or like a donor. So 92% donor. Okay. So one patient came to me, say 2 weeks back from Vellore. He was diagnosed here in baby 1 year back with AML. He was referred out for Vellore. Then he did a transplant. He received a matched sibling donor transplant from his sister, and he came to me for follow-up. Presently, with me. So he was due for a chimerism, but the problem is for doing a VNTR, we have to send out, and we don't have the pre-transplant sample because it's in Vellore. So they can't travel also. So what I did was, the donor is a female. She's in Dubai. So I can't call her for a VNTR sample because we need a marker to compare with the present sample. So she's a female, he's a male. So what I did was I did a fish sample. This report came last 2 weeks back. So this is a 100% XX chromosomal pattern. It's a female. So this is 100% female marrow. So this is a 100% chimerism, donor chimerism. Okay. So as I spoke about CAR T cell in her case, so this is Emily Whitehead. Okay, this is the first patient of CAR T cell who received first CAR T cell. She's received in 2012, and today it's more not 5 years, so 8 years later on, he is in remission. Okay, Dr. Carl June from Philadelphia. So brief about CAR T cell, it is basically an engineered therapy. You take out the T cells of the patient, engineer it, insert anti-CD19 in case of an ALL, CD19 positive, culture it, grow it, multiply, and then put it back. So it goes and attacks the CD19 positive cells. So your own T cells are attacking your own 19 positive leukemia cells. This is the Clinimax Protege machine where you can prepare this thing in a matter of 8 to 14 days. Okay, so 5 year survival post-transplant is thalassemia and all. The only cure option for thalassemia kids is allogenic stem cell transplant. Same with aplastic anemia, 90% survival. AML, ALS, leukemia, malignant disease, several factors coming in, 60 to 50% survival based on leukemias. Okay, thalassemia now benign. Indian scenario, this is data from our group, Rajiv Gandhi. We used to regularly do allo transplant, so around 90% survival, comparable to the Western data. Okay, post transplant, now you did a transplant, are you done with that? Have you controlled the disease adequately? No, you have to give a maintenance. We can have a maintenance strategy post transplant, especially in malignant diseases. So those 3 months of autologous in myeloma, you start LEN for maintenance. Okay, so LEN definitely adds to the survival. And brentuximab, this is AETHER trial in Hodgkin lymphoma. You give 2 to 6 cycles of brentuximab, transplant, post transplant, you add brentuximab maintenance, again survival benefit. Okay, this is one review, invited review I've written. This covers all AML post transplant strategies, which currently available here. And other ALL also, there are several experimental things coming up. You have seen the TKI maintenance as I described in the case. This is daratumumab we did in our Rajiv Gandhi, which is published in stage. MRD positive post transplant. So we give daratumumab to make it MRD negative. Okay. So infrastructure, will be ending soon. The BMT infrastructure, what we what we need is HEPA filter room, positive airway, exchanges as per description, well-defined steels, and proper aseptic condition. Support from the blood bank, FRSS machine, cryopreservation lab, and trained nurses. These are the most important. This nursing staff who is trained and well versed in BMT. Okay, and this is the BMT room. This is from Rajiv Gandhi. HEPA filter monitor. This is Sharon, our chief nurse. These are the rooms. So conclusion, general principle, do it if benefit more than risk. Autologous myeloma, upfront lymphoma at relapse, allogenic acute leukemia, high risk leukemias, and other benign conditions for is curative.